Hello and welcome everyone to our webinar, The Raw Food Immunity Connection. We're super excited to share with you today important and often overlooked information on important nutrients for immune function, food sources of them, seldom discussed dietary consideration for creating health from the inside out, and much more. We want you to reach your health goals and are happy to provide you with information that can help you reach them while avoiding dietary pitfalls. This webinar is the first in our summer webinar series, Transcending What's Trending. Now, we've found in our collective 60-plus years of personal experience, as well as our research, education, and clinical experience, that it's so easy to be pulled in different directions depending on the prevailing trends in the health world, and that education is the greatest predictor of success on a raw food and plant-based diet. For those of you who don't know us yet, I'm Dr. Karen Dina, and you'll be hearing from Dr. Rick Dina in a few minutes. We're both chiropractic physicians with a strong interest in plant-based and raw food nutrition, and we're board certified and licensed in the state of California. We have also hosted raw food summits for the past 5 years, where we interviewed successful, healthy, long-term raw vegans and plant-based doctors to share with you how you can be successful on this path over the long term as well. We are also authors of the Raw Food Nutrition Handbook. And we're the developers of the Science of Raw Food Nutrition series of classes that we taught for 10 years in person. We're also the developers and instructors of the Mastering Raw Food Nutrition online and interactive program, which we'll share more about later on in this webinar. From this and speaking at many conferences and events over the years, we've become known for our thoroughness and scientific accuracy, our ability to make complex subjects easy to understand, and our encouraging approach that takes unnecessary hurdles out of people's way. Before we continue, we would like to let you know that the information and opinions expressed by us, Drs. Rick and Karen Dina, in this webinar are not intended to be used as medical advice and should not be used to diagnose or treat any medical condition or as a substitute for individual health care. This webinar is presented with the understanding that Drs. Rick and Karen Dina, us, are not liable for misconception, misuse, or adverse effects resulting from its use. Any type of dietary change, nutritional therapy, or fasting should always be undertaken with the supervision of a qualified healthcare practitioner. If you consult with us, we may end up being those healthcare providers for you, but watching this webinar does not establish a doctor-patient relationship. The menu plans or nutrient analyses that may be covered in this webinar are for educational purposes only. So now we'd like to share with you a little bit about what inspired each of us to start on this path in the first place. First, you'll hear from me, and then you'll hear from Dr. Rick. 30 years ago, I found raw food at a time when I was experiencing notable fatigue, for which there was apparently no answer. I was in college at the time, and I was sleeping 10, 12, and sometimes even more hours per night, and still waking up feeling like I needed more sleep to feel good. I saw 3 medical professionals, and after multiple lab tests and evaluations, I had a diagnosis: fatigue of unknown origin. They had a whole list of everything that I didn't have, but could not pinpoint the source of my fatigue. I asked every single one of them if my fatigue may have anything to do with my college diet and lifestyle, and they all emphatically said no. I started reading and researching different healing systems, which led me to a whole food plant-based dietary approach. Now, this helped me improve my fatigue, but when I learned about and implemented a raw food diet, my energy soared far beyond the impressive improvements that I experienced by just eating cooked whole food plant-based. Long story short, my fatigue vanished, along with a variety of other symptoms that I'd had for years, and I had more energy than I knew what to do with. I could not remember a time when I felt better. I started to look healthier, I slept better, I enjoyed exercising, and my digestion improved. I was so inspired by the health results I was experiencing that I felt compelled to learn more about the inner workings of the human body, nutrition, and the diet and health connection. I really wanted to immerse myself in learning as much as I could, so I earned a second undergraduate degree in biology and received doctorate-level education in naturopathic medicine and chiropractic, which helped me to put everything that I had observed into perspective and on a much deeper level. Over the years, I've refined and revised my approach to raw food and tailored it to my individual needs, and we can show you how to do this too. Another thing I'd like to share is throughout my childhood, I'd had upper respiratory symptoms essentially from the holidays in December until spring of every year. Now, what are upper respiratory symptoms? Sneezing, coughing, stuffy nose, sometimes a runny nose. Christmas photos of me with a red nose were really not all that unusual. In fact, I don't really remember being able to breathe through my nose during the winter months really ever growing up. I always seemed to have congestion. It seemed like I would always get whatever was going around. And this was true throughout my childhood, my teenage years, and even into early college. When I changed my diet to a whole food, raw food-based diet, in addition to all the other benefits that I just shared, I found that within a short period of time, I could actually breathe through my nose. My breathing was quiet. My congestion was gone. Now, I've only had upper respiratory symptoms a handful of times in the past 30 years since starting my raw food journey. My new normal of health is beyond what I would have ever imagined was possible. Next, Dr. Rick will share with you a bit about his background and experience with raw food and plant-based nutrition. So take it away, Dr. Rick.
Thank you, Dr. Karen, and hi, everybody. We have a great deal of information to share with you in this webinar. And in the past, I've given a more extensive history and background of myself on the plant-based and raw food paths. So I'm going to be very brief today. However, if you'd like more details, we've got the extended version of this background at the beginning of all of our 2019 webinars. And in the 2018 webinars, I went into more personal detail and shared some of my athletic endeavors in my early years of eating a plant-based diet with an emphasis on fresh fruits and vegetables. So in this webinar, I'll just share a succinct overview. So throughout childhood, I just ate the pretty much usual type of food. Overall, I was healthy, but I had a major issue with seasonal allergies, hay fever type issues, whereas throughout a lot of the spring and secondarily in the fall, I would have a runny nose, I would have itchy, watery eyes, mucus all over the place, and I was totally drained of energy. Some days I even had to miss work or school, and I even missed an entire year of playing Little League baseball. So I got to college and I gained the typical freshman 15, although I had about a 15-pound head start already, and I just did not feel good at all. In fact, here's an early photo of me. I was about 18 years old here, and you can tell I was not at my best there exactly, so I was pretty motivated to change. So I started making significant healthy changes to my diet. I lost 15 pounds of fat over the summer, so showed back up to school leaner and meaner, so to speak. I wanted to keep learning as much as I could because I knew I was on to some really good stuff. Now, back in those days, there weren't webinars and online summits and those types of things, but there were lots of books and magazines and conferences and potlucks and audio programs that I would listen to in the car. So I just immersed myself in all of that stuff as much as I could find and filled myself up with as much great information as possible. In 1987, I switched to a raw and heavily raw vegan diet, did those both about the same, at about the same time. In 1988, I fasted for 14 days, water fasted in my college dorm. Most people around me thought I was absolutely berserk, but that resolved the majority of those seasonal allergy issues that plagued my childhood, and they've remained not fully gone, but 80 to 90% of those symptoms have been gone for all this time. It's about 33 years later now. In 1988, I even skipped spring weekend at my college when everyone was having a lot of fun and there were bands and lots of parties to go to a natural hygiene conference to learn more about fresh fruits and vegetables. So here I am a year and a few months after that previous picture, a few months into my veganism, and as you might guess, I was feeling so much better. Briefly, in continuing my professional background, I worked at Hippocrates Health Institute back in the early 1990s. After that, I went to work for the Juice Man Company. We toured all over the United States, giving demonstrations in big hotel conference rooms and selling juicers. I then went back to school, to chiropractic school, to earn a doctorate degree. And by taking all of those in-depth science courses and seeing how everything fit together, combined with what I already knew about nutrition, so many light bulbs went off and things were sinking in at so much deeper of a level. Earning that doctorate degree allowed me the opportunity to spend the next 4 years after I graduated at the True North Health Center in California. I was one of the doctors involved in water fasting patients, and I got a wealth of clinical experience seeing what happens with all sorts of disease processes when people just get out of the way and let their body heal itself. So not only did I get to see that, I knew the histories of these patients. Some of them would come back and I'd get the follow-ups. I knew what all their lab work looked like, and it was just absolutely extraordinary. So I was there for 4 years and just, several hundred fasting patients. That was phenomenal. I then actually left, even though it was an incredible place, because Dr. Karen and I had been having a long-distance relationship for some time at that point. So I moved up to Seattle, where she was in the naturopathic medical program, as she told you, at Bastyr University. And while I was there, I taught there, actually. I put a plant-based nutrition curriculum together. And fast forwarding a few years, in late 2006, Dr. Karen and I started to put together our Science of Raw Food Nutrition curriculum based on our almost 20 years each of personal and clinical and educational experience at the time. And from 2006 through 2010, we developed that curriculum and taught it in person until early 2016. And at that point, we updated and expanded and significantly improved that curriculum. And that is now called Mastering Raw Food Nutrition, which we teach online as a 12-month program. We're actually going into our 5th year of that now, and we're extremely happy, and our students are extremely happy with how that's been going. So I think of myself as a full-time educator and a part-time clinician, at least in virtual practice, ordering lab work for patients, making sense out of that, and helping to fine-tune their diets for them so they can achieve the best health possible. And a lot of that clinical experience keeps me on top of things. I enjoy working with people, and we incorporate that clinical experience into our curriculum so things are very synergistic. In the 30 plus years that Dr. Karen and I have each been on this path, we have seen a lot of trends come and a lot of trends go in the plant-based, raw food, and in the general health fields. Last year, for example, we gave webinars about trending topics like ketogenic diets, intermittent fasting, and obtaining key nutrients, specifically iron and vitamin B12. The year before, we gave webinars on misconceptions about fruit, where we looked at the triglyceride levels of several high fruit eaters, myself included. We also looked at lab testing results for vitamin B12 and iron in real-life long-term raw vegans, and also gave a webinar about microbiome health. There have been several other topics in our previous webinars available on our rawfoodeducation.com website. Now, where to get key nutrients always seems to be trending, but so many other topics come and go. The good news here is what's always been consistent, no matter who or what has been trending at the time, is that when people add more fresh fruits and vegetables and other whole natural plant foods to their diets, while simultaneously decreasing, or better yet, eliminating processed foods, all sorts of health benefits can be realized. As many of you have heard so many examples of in our raw food summits over the past 5 years and in other places as well, and maybe I hope some of you have experienced some really extraordinary benefits as well. You'll hear this as a central theme in our immune system information coming up in this webinar as well. We sincerely want all of you to be able to understand the most important concepts and practices about nutrition so you can achieve extraordinary health, again, no matter who or what is trending at the time. We want you all to be truly trend-proof. So many times when something seemingly new comes on the scene, we think to ourselves how incredibly important it is to have a strong foundation and a scientifically valid perspective on nutrition so you can make sense out of what you see and hear. With this foundation, you are so much better equipped to be able to distinguish what is valuable from what is not. For example, Dr. Karen had information in our curriculum about bisphenol A, otherwise known as BPA, years before it became a thing out there that people were concerned about, justifiably. Our students, for example, knew about omega-3 conversion and if we needed to supplement with DHA years before. In relatively recent years, there's been some controversy back and forth about that topic. So when you're up to date on the foundations, you have the knowledge to be able to make sense out of this new information and to put it into context. So the good news is when you have a thorough understanding of where health comes from, which gives you the confidence to be able to take advantage of implementing those things without getting thrown off track by all the conflicting misinformation out there, so many systems in the body all work at peak efficiency, and there is a great deal of synergy in that. It allows you to truly experience a lifetime of supercharged health. So having said that, let's get on to our topic for this webinar in our continuing Transcending What's Trending series. The topic of this webinar, which will continue into our next webinar as well, is the immune system, specifically the raw food immunity connection. Now, the main function of our immune systems are to keep us healthy. And they do this, first of all, by monitoring the body and distinguishing self from non-self. And what is us? Our bones, our skin, our muscles, our organs, etc., or things we need, vitamins, minerals, etc., the body leaves alone. But what is not us may be something potentially harmful. So viruses, unhealthy bacteria, pesticides, pollutants, other foreign invaders. When our body sees those things, it protects us by destroying and eliminating these non-self items so we don't diminish our health. So the body, the immune system, has a variety of different strategies that it employs in order to keep us healthy. So one of the main things the body does when there's foreign invaders is it increases our white blood cell count. And it sends those white blood cells out there to get rid of the bad guys. Another thing the body does is can increase body temperature. We've probably all experienced that a few different times throughout our lives. Another thing the body can do is produce a bunch of mucus, and then we get a runny nose, and then we can cough and we can sneeze. And sometimes that's not very pleasant, and it can even be really disgusting. But know that your body is hard at work, your immune system's hard at work, getting the junk out and better out than in. Sometimes you'll notice some swollen lymph glands in various areas of the body. Sometimes you'll feel really tired. A lot of these activities here require a lot of energy, so you might not have a lot of energy left over. Inflammation, sometimes you get achy when you're sick. Sometimes that can also show up in lab work, and we'll see an example of that in a couple more slides. Let's see, we said feeling achy. Another interesting thing is our body actually utilizes free radicals to break down bad guys. So free radicals actually can have a positive effect in the body. We just don't want too many of them unchecked. That's when they start to accelerate the aging process. And when I hand the baton over to Dr. Karen in a few minutes, she's actually going to explain how to minimize the damaging effects of free radicals from this process. So lots of different ways our immune system can help get the foreign invaders out to keep us healthy. So here we have a complete blood count, also known as a full blood count. And we're looking at the WBC, the white blood cell count, of a long-term plant-based person. And we can see the reference range here is 3.4 to 10.8. And they're down at the lower end of the reference range at 4.3. And I happen to know this patient, that this is actually me. And you can see down in the bottom left here, July of 2019. I've tested myself for many things over many different years, and a white blood cell count 4 point something is pretty typical for me. Now, over the past 23 years in clinical practice, I've individually analyzed, in other words, one at a time, spending time specifically with that patient. I've looked at the lab work of several hundred omnivores and several hundred plant-only eaters. Because the food we eat has such a major influence over our biochemistry, and that affects many systems in the body, when we compare the lab results of omnivores versus plant-based eaters, there are several areas where we see differences. One of those areas, as this example is showing us, is in the white blood cell count. Now, you don't want your white blood cells to get too low. You want to know if there's some foreign invaders, that your body has a lot of capacity to produce as many white blood cells and as many other things as it needs to keep us healthy. But given if you're healthy, which is the case most of the time, lower white blood cell counts mean there is less stress on the body. Now, when we all go to school and get trained about the different systems of the body and what the symptoms are when someone's not feeling well or when they're not healthy, we all learned that when you see an elevated white blood cell count, then you know you have a potential problem. When the patient's healthy and their white blood cell count's lower, that's actually a really good sign. So just for fun, let's take a look at some of these other numbers. While we're here, everything looks really good. Just for fun, it was right up above here, fibrinogen. That is an inflammatory indicator in the body. And you can see 193 to 507 is the reference range. I was near the low end of the reference range there. So another good sign that is indicative of other people, like thousands of you out there who eat in a similar way to how I do. Now, here was late 2016. You can see my name down there this time. My white blood cell count was almost mid-range. And I was incredibly stressed during this time in my life due to some circumstances beyond my control, but that affected me in a very significant way. And I thought it would be fun to go test my lab work. So this was a little elevated for me, but it's still really good on the whole. And then just for fun, we can look at these other numbers again, my fibrinogen, as well as other inflammatory indicators that I measured that time as well. Were still low. So everything was good there. Sometimes I joke around with my patients and say, well, if you want to get up to the normal range, get really stressed, drink some alcohol, eat some processed food, do some other unhealthy things, and your white blood cell count will go up and you can be normal. And usually they say, no thanks, Dr. Rick. I'd like to be abnormal and healthy here. And we have some good agreement there. All right, so just to help illustrate this and make it more clear, here we have our typical lab reference range of white blood cells. 7.1 is the middle of that range. And the range that I see in my group of outliers, my group of people who eat whole plant foods focused on fruits and vegetables, I would say that 3 to 7 is about the typical reference range that I see. So what happens then is instead of your body working hard to make more white blood cells, it doesn't have to work as hard because it doesn't have to make as many. Then this gap that we see here shifting toward the left means, as I'll show down on the bottom, less stress on the body and more potential for your immune system to react to something really bad that might come in that you don't want and you want your body to get rid of as quickly as possible. So to help illustrate this, we're going to take a look at a pie chart showing our immune system capacity here in blue. Now, we said that the body is always monitoring itself to distinguish self from non-self. So I'm going to call that the basic tasks here. Some of our immune system capacity has to go towards that. So then we have some extra tasks. I mean, the immune system has to analyze everything coming in, even including food, to make sure everything's okay. So there's always some extra tasks. And I'll give a very short list here of some of the things that can take up some of our immune system's capacity. So pollution that we're exposed to, when we consume processed foods that are full of pesticides and preservatives, when we've overheated our foods and we've lost nutrients and we've formed new substances, oftentimes which are carcinogenic, when we overeat, and then when we do all these things, we end up getting sick, and then we go to the doctor and we take prescription drugs, and then we get the side effects from them, and then sometimes we just take recreational drugs because we want a break, we want an escape, we want to feel good. Those are only temporary measures. They make you feel worse over the long run, and so that adds to the burden of our body and takes up some of our immune system capacity. So now let's say instead of doing this, we start to increase our level of processed foods and we're heating everything, we're overheating it, we're overeating, we can see now that we've got this extra chunk of extra tasks that our immune system has to handle, therefore decreasing our immune system capacity. Nobody has unlimited immune system capacity, so we have to utilize it effectively. And if you do enough of these things over here in red, I might have been too conservative about how much of the pie we needed to use and therefore how much we diminished our immune system capacity. Maybe the dividing line should have been over here. The other double whammy here is that these same actions, these things tend to lead to things like obesity and high blood pressure and type 2 diabetes, which are known risk factors for people being susceptible and not recovering as well. So there's sort of a negative synergy that goes along with that. So let's get back to our baseline, and hopefully we're not doing too many of these things, and now we've increased our immune capacity a little bit. And let's imagine that we stop doing a lot of these things. Now we might look like this, all right? I'm going to cross a lot of this stuff out. Some pollution's inevitable. We can have some control over this, but not completely. So that's why I'm leaving these things here. So now we see that we have increased our capacity by stressing our immune system less, therefore increasing our immune system capacity. Now, some might refer to this as a boost to our immune system, but we actually see it a little bit differently. We see it simply as being able to more fully utilize what we already have. So that's why we sometimes use the term freeing up more capacity. We're just trying to maximize what our body is capable of. And this brings up a general principle. When we supply our body with its basic requirements while simultaneously decreasing, or better yet, eliminating the stressful, harmful factors, the self-healing capacity of the body is given full reign and it's given full opportunity to express itself. Now, here's the really good news. The same foods that are the most nutrient dense, that supply our immune system and the other systems of our body with the raw materials they need to do their jobs most effectively, simultaneously tend not to add extra tasks to our immune system. So organically grown fruits and vegetables, for example. Now you notice as I've gone to this slide, I made everything bigger because while we're at avoiding toxins from processed foods and eating healthier foods, we're going to get more nutrients, many of which the immune system needs to perform its function optimally. Functions, shall we say. So going back to compare, I've made everything bigger now. Oops, let me go there. Made everything bigger now. And I made these things, the extra tasks and the basic tasks, relatively smaller. So they take up the same absolute space, but they're relatively less because we've now increased our pie, indicating that the nutrients are increasing our immune capability, which Dr. Karen's going to talk about in a few minutes. Now, as an interesting, relevant side note, Dr. Karen discusses in the next section how certain nutrients provided by whole natural plant foods allow our white blood cells to do their jobs more effectively. And that actually makes me wonder if another factor in the lower white blood cell counts in healthy plant-based eaters may be due to the fact that the white blood cells that do get produced have the nutrients they need to function at peak capacity, therefore they're more effective compared to if you're eating a nutrient deficient diet, so maybe it doesn't take as many white blood cells to get the same job done. So whether this is the case or not, it seems highly likely to me that optimal nutrition that supplies the body with what it needs while simultaneously minimizing the extra tasks of our immune system is a double whammy of positive synergy to optimize our immune system function. Now, to make this comparison extra clear, let's go back to the scale of the typical pie slices of people who are doing a lot of things that create extra tasks for their immune system and simultaneously not supplying it with the nutrients it needs. So we've got this chunk of pie right here representing our immune system capacity. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change the color to this grayish color. I'm going to bring it on down to the next slide, and we're going to let it come on down, and we're going to superimpose this upon our synergistic, healthier, higher capacity immune system. Now, what a big difference we see here between where most people are and where we'd like to see everybody instead. And even though this is conceptual, it can explain a lot of things. It can explain, for example, why when Dr. Karen switched her diet in college, she had so much more energy. Because her body was less taxed, she had more energy left over. This can also explain things like why my allergy symptoms improved so significantly when I changed my diet, and fasting was very helpful there as well. So it's really great to see how much plant-based diets have been consistently increasing in popularity over the 30 years that we've been involved in this movement, because it works. People get great results, and they keep on going, and word spreads, and more doctors get involved, and more people start teaching it, and we're always so happy to see that. Never gets old for us. So here we have the same thing with the labels taken away, so maybe we can kind of have less in the way and see everything more clearly here to see that difference. I'm going to put the label back on there, and just for fun, we have a couple other ways of looking at the same thing. So here's the whole thing without the label, and to end with, we'll take a look at this thing back here again and look at how much increased capacity we can experience if we do all the right things. So let's just say, for example, if you're exposed to a future virus and that enters your system, or if you're just looking toward general health, which immune system chunk of the pie would you like to have? This one, or would you like to have this entire thing? So I think most of us would say we want the entire thing, but we don't get it automatically. We have to do the right things in order to have that occur. Now, when we ask ourselves if we, at the same time, we're at enhancing our immune system or maximizing our immune system capabilities, if we would also like to avoid heart disease, strokes, angina, TIAs, dementia, diabetes, hypertension, autoimmune disease, aches, pains, premature aging, and then going on pharmaceutical medications and dealing with their side effects, brain fog, being overweight, sluggishness, etc. And instead, you'd like to optimize your weight, optimize your energy, blood pressure, blood sugar, mental clarity, athletic performance, etc., and enhance your overall well-being, then the great news is we have a huge amount of control over all of this at the same time with the choices that we make. So getting back to the immune system directly, Dr. Karen is going to share with you the connection between immune function and several key nutrients, and also show you where those nutrients come from in stress-free forms that maximize your immune capacity while simultaneously creating the least amount of stress, giving you the largest possible blue chunk of immune capacity pie.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Dr. Rick. Now, there's been a lot of talk about nutrition and immunity lately, and as a result, I've spent quite a bit of time researching the diet and immunity connection and the different nutrients that have been linked to immune system function. And I've learned quite a bit. In fact, I was thinking that I could share the basics of what I've learned in one webinar, but as it turns out, even the basics could really fill volumes. So as a result, I'll share this information over the course of this webinar and at least one more. So this is the Raw Food Immunity Connection, Part 1. There are a number of nutrients that are important for immune system function, including but not limited to vitamin C, D, E, B2, B6, B12, folate, iron, selenium, zinc, and more. One of the most popular nutrients is vitamin C. And when I was a child back in the 1970s, vitamin C supplements were all the rage. And usually the standard rap surrounding them was that vitamin C was good for immunity. Fast forward to 2020, a lot of what I've learned about vitamin C and immunity has been straightforward and clear, while a lot of it still has yet to be worked out in the scientific community and is still a work in progress. So we'll share with you today some of what is known. Vitamin C is important for a variety of different aspects of immune function, including the creation and activity of certain white blood cells. Now, white blood cells you might have heard of in the past. White blood cells are individual cells that are involved in immune system function. And these white blood cells would include monocytes, T lymphocytes or T cells, B lymphocytes or B cells, NK cells, also known as natural killer cells, and neutrophils. Essentially, vitamin C helps these immune system cells do their job better. For example, vitamin C accumulates in neutrophils, enhancing their ability to swallow harmful pathogens and neutralize them. Now, neutrophils are phagocytes, and if we actually take a look at the term phagocyte, we can see that it's a combination of a couple of terms, phago and cyte. And phago means eat, and cyte means cell. So phagocytes are immune system cells that ingest or swallow harmful pathogens. Much like how Pac-Man, for those of you who can remember the video game from the 1980s, where Pac-Man in the shape of a little circle with a mouth runs around a maze eating dots. And here's Pac-Man getting ready to eat some dots. And here's our neutrophil again. Now, once the neutrophil has ingested the pathogen, it uses its internal resources to neutralize it. And vitamin C is involved in this process. So here's our neutrophil, and the neutrophil has actually already ingested a few pathogens here. And so what's going to happen is that neutrophil is going to neutralize those pathogens. Now, not surprisingly, vitamin C depletion has been found to be common in severe infections. It's important to note that vitamin C is not produced by our bodies, so we must get it from outside sources, which we'll talk about shortly. Vitamin C also plays an important role in many structural components of the body, as it is a critical nutrient involved in the production of collagen, and maybe you've heard of collagen before. Now, collagen is the main structural protein that the body uses to create underlying structures of our bones, our skin, the lining of our blood vessels, as well as organs, tendons, ligaments, and much more. And collagen is also a part of our connective tissue that holds everything in our body together. So our organs and a bunch of other structures in our body are all held in together through this connective tissue. Without enough vitamin C, these structures can become compromised. Now, without enough vitamin C, we have impaired immune system function as well, which can lead to increased potential for infections. Now, these infections can then exacerbate the vitamin C deficiency, since more vitamin C is needed to build an already weakened immune system, which we'll talk about more as this presentation continues. Now, when we have enough vitamin C, all of these structures in our immune system can have what they need to function correctly. This is one example of what Dr. Rick meant earlier when he said that all the systems of the body can work together harmoniously when we give our body what it needs to function optimally. Vitamin C is also an antioxidant that, along with important other nutrients found in plants such as vitamin E and bioflavonoids, works to neutralize free radicals created by our immune system to protect the structures of our body. And up here on the screen, we have a representation of vitamin C acting as an antioxidant to neutralize free radicals. And so what we have here is a free radical, and free radicals are molecules that are very reactive. They have what's called an unpaired electron. What that means is that somehow they are missing an electron, and the fact that they are missing an electron makes them very reactive. So free radicals can be neutralized by an antioxidant known as vitamin E. So what vitamin E does is it donates an electron to the free radical, neutralizing it, and then vitamin E itself becomes a radical, free radical, and then along comes antioxidant vitamin C that donates an electron to vitamin E, therefore neutralizing it and turning it back into the antioxidant vitamin E, and in the process becomes what's called dehydroascorbic acid. So vitamin C is a great antioxidant, and it can help to regenerate vitamin E, so vitamin E can continue to act as an antioxidant as well. Now, what foods are good sources of vitamin C? There are so many of them, including the following. So on the screen, we have a table that has some very good sources of vitamin C, and I have them arranged according to serving size. And the reason why is because I just wanted to show you how good they are per serving. Now, I know that a lot of people in the raw food community actually eat serving sizes that are much bigger than this. So you can always adjust the serving size and the amount of vitamin C accordingly, depending on how much of these types of foods that you actually eat. So as we can see here, things like cauliflower, kiwi fruit, red bell pepper, specifically red bell pepper, is known to be a great source of vitamin C. Strawberries are also known to be a very good source of vitamin C. Papaya, broccoli, orange, citrus fruits are known to be excellent sources of vitamin C. Cantaloupe, and then berries like mulberries, raspberries, and blackberries, they all are very good sources of vitamin C as well. And then we have some greens. We've got dandelion greens. Greens in general tend to be a good source of vitamin C. I have dandelion greens listed up here, but there are lots of other leafy greens that are good sources of vitamin C. So I would encourage you to take a look at those and see which ones you like. Now, in comparison, the recommended dietary allowances for vitamin C for adults are 90 milligrams for men and 75 milligrams for women. Now, a comparison of the recommended dietary allowances to the intake of vitamin C among American adults showed that there was an average intake of about 85 milligrams per day naturally occurring in foods, plus vitamin C obtained from enriched and fortified foods. Now, naturally occurring alone was about 73 milligrams. Now, I'd like to mention here that supplements were not included in these numbers. This number of 85 milligrams actually came from the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, 2003 through 2006. Now, I found it really saddening that vitamin C is a common nutrient deficiency in the United States, given how easy it is to get enough vitamin C. A 2009 study showed vitamin C deficiency in 13% of the U.S. population, the fourth most common nutrient deficiency in the United States, according to some other researchers. How do these numbers compare to people eating a raw food or a raw food-focused diet? Now, we've done many nutrient analyses over the years where we've added up the amounts of each nutrient for daily meal plans. And what we've found for vitamin C intake is that for the 2,000 calorie meal plans, we see kind of on the low end around 450 milligrams in lower fruit eaters to around 1,500 milligrams for higher fruit eaters. Now, I'd like to say that this isn't peer-reviewed research. This is just from our own observation. So if we look up here on the screen, we see for people who tend to eat a lower fruit, raw food-focused diet, we see about 450 milligrams of vitamin C. Okay, so that's on the lower end of the range. There are people who eat lower fruit diets that are higher than this. It really just depends on the types of foods that they're eating. That's really what it comes down to. Now, for people eating higher fruit diets, we tend to see more vitamin C because fruits tend to be a really rich source of vitamin C. So on the higher end of the range, we see 1,500 milligrams of vitamin C in the higher fruit eaters. So most people are going to fall somewhere between these two numbers, but we have seen people that have been higher or lower, so it really just depends. A couple of days ago, I actually did a nutrient analysis of what I ate in a day, and I found that for the 2,000 calories that I'd eaten that day, I had 760 milligrams of vitamin C. That's pretty good. I have some days that are much higher than that as well. It just kind of depends on what I'm having on the particular day. And if this is interesting to you, we encourage you to take a look and see where your vitamin C intake is as well. Now, at this point, you may be wondering about research on vitamin C and immune function. And as it turns out, there's been a lot of research done in this area, specifically with vitamin C and supplementation. Likely because, from a research standpoint, it's much easier to control for vitamin C dosage if one uses a supplement. In food, it's harder to quantify, and it's harder to isolate the variables. For example, if you have a group of people who are eating a similar diet, and you split them into two groups and give one a vitamin C supplement and the other a placebo for a period of time, there's really one main variable between the groups, the supplement. So the preponderance of the research has been done using vitamin C supplements. But what's the difference between a vitamin C supplement and vitamin C from whole foods? This is a good question to consider as we move forward here. An often cited and well-known study published in the Cochrane Database of Systematic Reviews that examined the efficacy for vitamin C for preventing and treating the common cold in 29 studies with over 11,300 participants found that supplemental vitamin C in doses of over 200 milligrams does not reduce the risk of contracting a cold. But the supplements had several benefits, including reduced cold severity, which means reduced cold symptoms, and reduced cold duration, which means in this study, or this group of studies, decreased recovery time by 8% in adults and 14% in children. That doesn't look particularly impressive. Not surprisingly, I've seen this study used by some people to debunk the effectiveness of vitamin C for immune function. But what they don't realize is that the 29 studies in this review, like we said earlier, looked at supplements specifically, not whole food. Vitamin C supplements are usually just extracted ascorbic acid, which is not the only component of naturally occurring vitamin C. The supplement studies also failed to account for the vitamin C that people in the studies were already consuming from whole foods. For example, one group of researchers found that healthy individuals may not benefit from supplementation if dietary intake from food is at least 200 milligrams per day. Now, as it turns out, there's a large body of research indicating that higher levels of vitamin C are important for individual aspects of immune system activity, including the function of white blood cells such as neutrophils, macrophages, B cells, T cells, and more, like we talked about earlier. It would be really interesting to see the difference in the effect of vitamin C from whole food versus supplements, even though it would be challenging to quantify the individual effect of vitamin C. It's good to know that vitamin C has been studied for its synergistic effects with other nutrients, and a good example of that is the antioxidant function of vitamin E in bioflavonoids. The great news is that research indicates the health benefits of fruits and vegetables high in vitamin C and other synergistic nutrients for overall health, not just immunity. In addition, fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds have so many positive benefits linked to better immune function. For example, they are high in fiber. For microbiome health, since healthy immune system function is linked to a healthy microbiome, they are naturally low in factors that promote inflammation, leading to less preoccupation of our immune system in dealing with inflammation. In addition to not creating inflammation in the first place, fresh fruits and vegetables have anti-inflammatory phytochemicals to counteract the inflammation. And in addition to having important nutrients like vitamin C, they also have a symphony of other important nutrients working together synergistically, including vitamins E, B2, B6, folate, minerals including iron, selenium, and zinc, phytochemicals such as beta-carotene and bioflavonoids, and lots of other ones too. Providing foods that contain these and other important nutrients and eliminating foods that promote inflammation or leading to other health challenges that create a drag on our immune system can help us to consistently put our best foot forward when it comes to our immune system and our health in general. As we can see, there are a lot of nutrients besides vitamin C that are important for immune function, and iron is certainly one of them, so we'll talk about it here. Iron is a mineral that's involved in a number of activities in the body, including the formation of red blood cells. And in red blood cells, iron is involved in carrying oxygen from our lungs to our tissues and in carrying carbon dioxide from our tissues back to our lungs, where it can be exhaled as a waste product. Essentially, iron plays an important role in the oxygenation of our tissues. Sometimes when people are low in iron, they have iron deficiency, and then their body's ability to oxygenate its tissues is compromised. And so sometimes these people experience fatigue. Now, when I was experiencing fatigue back in college, an iron test was one of the tests that I was given. And as it turned out, I was not iron deficient. So many of my doctors looked onto other possibilities. Now, other functions iron is involved with in our body would include energy production and immune system function, among others. Iron deficiency or excess can influence the functioning of our immune system. Specifically, iron can have an effect on the growth and the virulence of pathogens. An important part of our immune defense is actually depriving these pathogens of iron. Bacteria, for example, need iron to live just like we do. Now, what this actually means is that these immune system cells absorb iron from our bloodstream to prevent pathogens from being able to use it. What it comes down to is that we want enough iron, but we don't want too much. Oftentimes, people hear about the benefits of a nutrient, and they figure that if some is good, then more must be better. But as we can see here, in the context of our immune system, more can actually be worse. There are two main dietary forms of iron, the heme form and the non-heme form. The heme form is found in animal foods and supplements. And when I say animal foods, I'm mostly referring to red meat. Many different supplements I've seen contain the heme form of iron, and how I can tell is by looking on the supplement bottle or container in the ingredient list. And if I see the words ferrous sulfate, that means that the supplement contains the heme form of iron. Now, the non-heme form of iron is the type of iron that is found in plant foods. Now, I don't know if you've heard this, but many times I've heard people say that the iron found in animal foods is more easily absorbed than the type of iron found in plant foods. And my answer to this idea is this. It's a little bit more specific than that. And as it turns out, the form of iron in plant foods is more selectively absorbed than the iron found in animal foods. And what that means is that with the non-heme form of iron, the iron status of the person affects absorption. So this form of iron is absorbed more readily when it's needed by the body and less readily when it's not needed, which is actually really good because iron is a really important mineral, but we don't want too much of it. Now, the heme form of iron is less selectively absorbed, which means that the body absorbs this form of iron whether or not it needs it. Having enough iron is important, but too much can be potentially problematic, and this is true for many reasons, including immune function. The bottom line for iron from food and how that relates to our immune system is that by obtaining iron from plant sources, we have selective absorption, which is a built-in protection mechanism to limit excess production of free radicals and decreases the iron our immune system cells have to absorb from our bloodstream to prevent pathogens from being able to use it. If you'd like to learn more about getting just the right amount of iron from healthy plant foods, after you finish watching this webinar, you can visit our website, rawfoodeducation.com, and click on the Mastering Raw Food Nutrition tab to see past webinars where we go into a lot more detail about this important mineral and getting just the right amount. Another important nutrient for immune function is selenium. Like iron, selenium is a mineral. I'm covering selenium here today because fruits and vegetables tend to be lower in selenium. But fortunately, there's one very rich source that we'll talk about shortly. Selenium has some important functions in the body, so it's important to know good sources. It functions with an enzyme in our body known as glutathione peroxidase, which is responsible for neutralizing free radicals. Now, free radicals, as I mentioned earlier, are molecules that are very reactive and can cause damage to cells in our body. So glutathione peroxidase helps to transform these dangerous molecules into harmless water. And selenium plays an important role in this process. Additionally, selenium plays an essential role in the activation of thyroid hormone, also known as T3. Selenium is also involved in the function and production of various immune system cells and structures. Examples would include some of the things we talked about earlier, like neutrophils and T and B cells, NK cells, also known as natural killer cells, production of antibodies, and immune globulin function, specifically IgG and IgM, and more. Selenium is also involved in regulating excessive immune response and chronic inflammation. Now, this is important to consider because we want our immune system to work appropriately. We do not want it to work excessively. When the immune system overreacts, that can lead to damage to body tissues and more. So the bottom line here is that selenium helps to regulate excessive immune response so that the immune system does not overreact. So what is the daily value? Similar to iron, we want enough, but we don't want too much. The recommended dietary allowance for selenium is 55 micrograms, with an upper limit of 400 micrograms. So what is a good source? The answer is Brazil nuts. One Brazil nut contains 165% of the recommended dietary allowance for selenium, making them one of the richest sources of selenium. An average-sized Brazil nut has almost 91 micrograms of selenium. We usually have a Brazil nut a few times a week to cover our basic selenium needs. Now, there are other foods that contain selenium, but none of them are nearly as rich in selenium as Brazil nuts. For example, sunflower seeds are a decent source of selenium, but one would have to eat a lot of them to get close to the daily value. Now, in this section, we have talked about vitamin C, iron, and selenium, and their connection to immune function. Now we're going to shift gears, and Dr. Rick is going to continue the conversation. So take it away, Dr. Rick.
Thank you, Dr. Karen, for all of that useful nutrient information. Now that we've seen the benefits of ideal amounts of vitamin C, iron, and selenium from plenty of fresh fruits and vegetables, and in this case a few Brazil nuts, we can maximize the function of our immune system while simultaneously minimizing the stress, creating the best possible immune system capacity, which helps keep us protected from whatever types of stresses might come our way. In today's webinar, we presented just a tiny fraction of the information available to those of you who would like to continue your journey learning with us. Before we tell you more about how you can do that, we'd like you to consider the theme of our webinar series from this year and last year, which is Transcending What's Trending. Now, there's been a lot of talk lately, very justifiably, about our immune systems. But when this particular crisis that we're in now becomes less of an issue, having a strong immune system is still going to be extremely important. And because the same nutrients and the same healthy eating considerations apply to so many other systems of the body that all work together synergistically, these same considerations make sense to focus on for your best health and well-being across the board for a lifetime. We truly want all of you to be trend-proof. Why? Because for those of us who are motivated and willing to make meaningful dietary and lifestyle changes, misinformation is probably the single largest hurdle to the process of achieving excellent health. No matter what you eat, there's someone out there to tell you why it's bad for you. But when you're really well educated, you are much less susceptible to the misinformation throwing you off track. And with all that stuff coming at us today, it's more important than ever to be well educated. And as far as the misinformation goes, this issue is going to only continue to get worse over time. So we all need to know what to do, and we need to be confident in it so we keep building and experiencing our best health consistently. And when you have that level of education that leads to that level of confidence, you can truly achieve a lifetime of supercharged health. Our curriculum, Mastering Raw Food Nutrition, based on our 30 plus years of personal, clinical, research, teaching experience, is designed to do just that. It's a year long, and our next program begins on August 26th, 2020. Our typical student spends about 4 hours per week with the course material. So if you're one of those people out there who's willing to put in a few hours a week for an entire year and cover the financial commitment, which is a few $1,000s, you can dramatically increase your chances for success and very much enjoy the learning process. So I'll first tell you about the topics we cover in this course, and then I'll go into how it's actually delivered. So the topics, boy, this is going to take a few minutes just to read off the topics that we cover. There's a huge array of things we cover in this curriculum. Pretty much everything you need to know about plant-based and raw food nutrition. We start out by covering calorie density, such an important concept, and being absolutely fluent in that is critical to so much of the rest of understanding. So we start off with a bang. Dr. Karen covers the basics of nutrition to give an overview of things to come. Blood sugar regulation, one of my favorite topics. Raw food sources of nutrients, including calcium, vitamin D, vitamin B12. Essential fats, which tie into blood sugar so much. Acid-alkaline balance, cleansing and detoxification, and not just the old-time rhetoric, but up-to-date science about how all of this stuff works together. Where do you get your protein? Of course, we need to cover that. Essentials of human digestion. Enzymes. And by the way, you've got the pro-enzyme raw food rhetoric. You've got the anti-raw rhetoric. Oh, all enzymes just get destroyed by hydrochloric acid, so therefore it doesn't matter. And as it turns out, both of those points of view of rhetoric are quite incomplete. And the real truth is what Dr. Karen shares with you in this class based on being up on all the facts and putting it together. Longevity and youth extension. We get into some really cool science there about how you can apply these principles to maximize your quality and quantity of life. We cover health statistics, so you know what's causing trouble and how to avoid it. The history of raw and living foods. We cover the foundations of why different camps of raw foodists think the way they do and the history behind it. Dr. Karen looks at two approaches and the nutrient concerns there, foundations of the raw food diet, food combining, raw food and weight loss, classic studies in support of plant-based nutrition. We look at McDougall and Pritikin and the Framingham Heart Study and the China Study and Esselstyn and Ornish and all the classics there, and we lay the foundation for the importance of whole natural plant foods. We then go on to look at the additional benefits of more fresh fruits and vegetables in your diet. So for example, when you're not cooking food, you're avoiding various carcinogens that we mentioned briefly that can stress your immune system, for example. We go into more of the effects about heating on food from what happens to your food when you cook it from a nutrient perspective. And of course, we cover beta carotene and lycopene very thoroughly. Organic versus non-organic, grains, plant families, making sense of food labels, psychological factors in health and healing, different perspectives on candida, DHA, xenoestrogens, and phytoestrogens. I cover a lot of case histories from my 4 years of clinical experience at True North in the juice and water fasting section. Dr. Karen covers a survey of superfoods and supplements in several sections where she distinguishes the marketing claims from the real science so you can make sense out of what is being said out there and know if it's really legit or not. Expanded raw food sources of nutrients, raw food exaggerations, the history of human food choices. Oh, there's competing thoughts out there. Was it meat that gave us a big brain? Was it starches? Was it fruit? She examines all of those very fairly and objectively so you have accurate information so you know what to do with. Big question of animal products, importance of sleep, menu planning for various health challenges. We've talked about the Healthy Foundation covers so many things across the board, but there are some nuances depending on the health challenge you're dealing with, and those are really important to know about. An expanded view of carbohydrates, raw food weight loss too. Dr. Karen looks at all the different sweeteners out there, and our bottom line is minimize or eliminate them, just eat fruits and vegetables, but if you want to make some of the fancier things, it's good to know what's going in there and what the best choices are. the importance of hydration, research in support of raw food nutrition. There's enough raw foodists out there in the world that researchers have studied them, and there's science behind it, and we can see what happens and make sense out of it. Nutrient analyses of various plant foods and then various sample diets. And we'll see even within raw food, there are some significant differences. And comparing raw food diets to whole food plant-based diets to standard American diets, it's very, very revealing. Then I've got 4 more hours on fatty acids, an advanced section where we look at omega-3 conversion and a whole bunch of case histories. We go on to an overview of energy, where you look at all the mechanisms and what happens to fructose and fat and what are the metabolic pathways and how does that affect fat on our body. Sea vegetables, probiotics and prebiotics, the pleasure trap, extraordinary information borrowed from Drs. Doug Lisle and Alan Goldhammer. The autonomic nervous system, overcoming challenges and pitfalls in raw food nutrition. That summarizes a lot of the other sections and adds additional information to make sure you are fluent in all of these principles so you never have to get thrown off track. Then in the last quarter of the class, we go into our educator material. So whether you are somebody who wants to go out and educate others about plant-based and raw food nutrition, or just be able to speak to friends and family and coworkers with authority and be a good influence on them instead of them being a bad influence on you, this section is so important to bring things together and to give you that confidence so you won't be thrown off track. And Dr. Karen has a section on searching for information in the scientific literature after this class is over, so you can continue how to handle questions, how to put events together, all that kind of stuff to make sure you are incredibly solid. And no matter what your goal is for yourself or to educate others or just for your friends and family, by the time our students complete this course, their level of understanding and confidence in a whole food plant-based diet with a foundation of raw fruits and vegetables is extremely high. We send surveys out and ask people how much they learned, and most people say my level has skyrocketed, even if they have an extensive background already. They really appreciate the thorough and unbiased perspective that we share. And the thing is, our position is all you have to do is tell the truth, and the benefits of plant-based and raw food nutrition are naturally revealed. No outrageous claims, nothing crazy, just amazing health-supporting results. Many of you know Chris Kendall from YouTube and other social media, from fruit festivals. If you've listened to any of our summits in the past 5 years, you have likely heard from him. Chris took our class last year, and here's what he said in responding to our survey. Drs. Rick and Karen are literal gold mines for an up-to-date, unbiased, raw food and vegan nutritional education. I already had a strong foundation in these subjects and enjoy researching myself. But the way the Mastering Raw Food Nutrition is laid out and the depth that goes into the current science, coupled by their combined 60 years of experience, is next level. I feel blessed to have taken this class and know anyone seeking success with a raw/vegan diet or teaching it will benefit more than expected. So we're so happy to have Chris join us. It was kind of fun to have a raw food celebrity in class with us. Tamar from Israel says, the Mastering Raw Food Nutrition course is the best course I have ever had. Also, being vegan for almost 12 years and eating mostly raw for 4 years, and all that time doing my best for educating myself about the natural hygiene philosophy and about vegan and raw food lifestyles, the course gave me a strong foundation into the science and the history of the plant-based movement that I was looking for to be sure that I'm doing the right thing for me and my family. Thank you so much. And in another comment, she said, thanking you for making such a profound, comprehensive, and professional course. Susan from Idaho said, though I've been a raw food enthusiast for over 10 years, I never knew what I never knew. Drs. Rick and Karen taught me some key principles that were missing from my understanding of raw food nutrition. I'm grateful for both of you, who you are, and how much you use your wisdom and knowledge to support others in their path to greater health and vitality. Thank you so much. And Jackie said, get ready to learn lots about nutrition that you never knew existed. So it is incredibly detailed, incredibly thorough, incredibly comprehensive, and we lay it out in a way that makes sense. So if you're already concerned, oh, these people know so much already, don't worry. Even if you're not science-based, we lay it out in a way that everybody can understand. In fact, if you've been following the information in this webinar, you'll be able to follow the course videos. So the primary way that we deliver the content is through professional quality videos, similar to what you're seeing here. There's approximately 2 hours per week of videos. We break those down into 20 to 30 minute segments, so you don't have to watch everything all at once. You can re-watch these or listen, because we have the audio-only versions, as many times as you want. And actually, we're using a new delivery system this year that once you sign back in, wherever you left off, it will bring you to that exact point, so you don't have to remember again. So if you're busy and you want to cover things in bits and pieces, that is available to you. Now, the thing is, each 2 hours took us probably hundreds of hours worth of research to put together, and it cuts through the nonsense. It just delivers what's most important very efficiently and very clearly. It makes an incredibly good use of your valuable time. Along with the videos comes comprehensive notebooks. We sent you 4 separate notebooks. Here they come throughout the year. There's over 900 pages of notes with thousands of scientific references that we used to put this curriculum together. Now, these notebooks are designed to complement the videos. They're not just transcripts of what we said. They have bullet points and charts and graphs. And the thing is, when you have your notebooks open, when you're listening and watching to the videos, everything makes sense. And you don't have to try to write everything down as quickly as possible. You can really pay attention to the videos and see what's in the notes and let all that sink in, because everything, just about everything, is in the notes. Some students fill in a little bit more. And then in addition to complementing the videos, once the course is over, these notebooks are lifetime reference material. So here is one of them, if I can line that up with the camera. And just to show you a few samples here, there are some of the things, if I can line that up. You see there's bullet points, there's charts, there's graphs. It's really easy to follow along. And then when you go to look some things up after the class is over or during the class, just to review a little bit, it's all laid out for you. And it's taken a huge amount of effort to coordinate that and put those notes together. But our students find them so incredibly valuable. We also have video conferences on Tuesdays, 2 different times, 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. Pacific time, which, depending on where you are in the world, usually covers most people. So that's where we get together in small groups and we answer questions and have discussion about the course content. So you get direct interaction with Dr. Karen and I regularly, several times per month. Now, what's nice about this is even if you can't make one of the meetings or one of the times just doesn't work for you, you can submit your questions in advance of the call. We will answer them during the call, and we actually record and save each call. So you can submit your questions in advance and then listen to the recordings afterwards. And so it's almost in real time, but it's still direct interaction with Dr. Karen and I. And our students, a lot of them just absolutely love coming on the conferences and being able to clarify things and let everything sink in, from their answering their own questions, us answering their own questions, as well as hearing questions and answers from other students. Now, one of the things we're improving this year is we're adding video conferencing. To make a long story short, our previous method allowed you to submit questions in advance, and then we could upload our very high quality recordings to our system. It did not allow for video conferencing, whereas the video conferencing systems would not allow you to upload the high quality recordings and not allow you to submit questions in advance, only during the call. But now that we're updating our delivery system, we have the capability of getting questions in advance and uploading the calls. Therefore, we're going to be having video conferencing and get the best of everything. So you get to see us on the calls also, and we'll each have about half the screen, and we can share our screens also to show notes and other things. You won't just see a little thumbnail of us in the top corner. Okay, so for the past 4 years, we've had a Facebook group. And the Facebook group largely helps to support the conference call topics. So a student has a question, whether they ask directly with their voice or they submit the questions in advance, we will often post things in the Facebook group to support answering the questions, some research articles, some websites, whatever the case may be. Students also get to know each other in the group. They share recipes, talk about some different things, and there's a general sense of support. Now, we know that many people are legitimately concerned about privacy issues. So another positive change that we're making for this year's class coming up in August of 2020 is we're going to have a private study group in place of the Facebook group. So let's get Facebook on out of there, and we're going to have a private study group which replaces the Facebook feature, but it's part of the course. You don't have to go somewhere outside of the course, and you don't have to worry about your personal information being sold or shared or getting bombarded with things that you don't want to see. You can just focus on the course material, and that's one of the changes we're actually really, really happy about for this upcoming year in our effort to constantly strive for excellence and deliver this in a way that makes sense to you and sinks in so you can use it, so you can get all the benefits for a lifetime of extraordinary health, all designed to help you. One of our students from this last year, Monica from Canada, says that she is not a scientific person, never cared much about science. That's why she felt it's a real challenge for her. She said, Dr. Karen and Dr. Rick presented the course very well, so even I would actually understand. Their knowledge is so deep and very detail-oriented. They explained everything in the way everyone could understand, but at a professional level. I would recommend their course with love because I know their knowledge is so unique, and actually I feel lucky to have found them, and I was able to be a part of the 2018-19 class. Thank you for them to do all the research and nerdiness to be able to put together this beautiful course. She also said, keep up the excellent work. The world needs you, with a heart and a rainbow and a smiley sun there. So that's great. Now, another thing to consider here is that English is not Monica's first language, but she was still able to follow and understand everything between being able to watch the videos as many times as she wanted, hitting pause, going back, following along in the notebooks, and having the calls to be able to clarify everything. We have many students who English is not their first language. Pierre from Paris, France said, "This course is just amazing. The work that has been done is just phenomenal. It covers everything around raw food and plant-based diets. We receive what science knows today about food. It clears every misunderstanding about food and nutrition. I use the course as a database for every video, article, and seminar I can attend. Now I feel able to do my own research and to analyze better every scientific content. Thank you." So out of this solid foundation, he is truly becoming trend-proof. He uses what he learned in our course as a reference point and as context to plug everything else he comes across into to help determine if it makes sense or if it doesn't. Another point about exposure versus cohesion. There are courses out there where you hear from lots of different people, and yes, they're all plant-based, but they don't all have the exact same perspective. So on the one hand, Dr. Karen and I have diverse backgrounds. She went to naturopathic medical school for 2.5 years, for example, and learned some things that I didn't. She also did a summer preceptorship at True North, but that was just for a summer, whereas I was there for 4 years. Because of our different backgrounds, we each bring different things to the curriculum, but because we're a married couple and we love this stuff and this is what we do full time, everything revolves around the same template and we make sure everything's integrated and it all works together and it all makes sense. So we love this stuff. We both have doctorate degrees. Karen sort of has 1 2/3 doctorate degrees and 2 undergrad degrees. And all that, our personal clinical experience, all comes together and integrates as a whole. It's another thing that helps cut through confusion. Anita from Croatia said, "The course was great. It really is a good investment in health and in life in general. Doctors Karen and Rick really are the masters of raw food. They feel very energetic and passionate about every topic and thus easily spread the knowledge to students. All of the topics are of high importance and have the strong ability to change people's life." And Anita has a PhD. She actually teaches full-time. She's a professor and teaches at a university, so she's involved full-time in academia. So that testimonial coming from an actual professor really means a lot to us. And our student base ranges from people with advanced doctorate degrees to people like Monica who aren't that into science, and we go to great lengths to make sure everybody can understand the information because it is so extremely valuable and life-enhancing. So to summarize how this is delivered, we've got our 2 hours of professional video content per week. You can also listen to the audio-only versions if you'd like, a feature we just added this year. If you like listening to podcasts or other information on the way to work or when you're out walking or when you're exercising, you can access the videos but just the audio content, so you use a lot less mobile data. Also this year, we're adding interactive quizzes at the end of the content for each week, also to help enhance the learning process. We've got those thoughtfully designed notebooks for each subject that we mentioned to help follow along with the videos and for lifetime reference material. We have our near weekly video conferences. You can join us live, you could submit questions in advance, and you can listen to the recordings afterwards. And we have video conferencing this year with the ability to see us that we haven't had in the past. And then we also have our non-Facebook private study group, which takes the place of our previous Facebook group, but without the privacy concerns. Everything is fully private. All of this, again, is designed to make this make sense to you, so you're confident in it, so you implement it, so you can get all the benefits for a lifetime of supercharged health. Today we covered just a tiny bit of what is available in our Mastering Raw Food Nutrition curriculum, and there's so much more available for those of you willing to make the commitment to keep learning with us. Remember earlier when I showed you that photo of when I was overweight and having a bad allergy day? And based on the way I felt, I was really motivated to make some changes. I made the decision to change my course, and I am so glad that I did. Now it's time for you to make a decision. You're watching this webinar because you're interested in plant-based and raw food nutrition and taking your knowledge to the next level so you can supercharge your health and maintain it for a lifetime. At this point, you probably already have a good idea of if you'd like to continue your learning journey with us. Our next group program begins on August 26th of 2020, and it won't be offered again until late August of 2021. You can watch and listen to the course videos on your own schedule as many times as you'd like. This gives you plenty of time for the information to sink in. In addition to the comprehensive set of notes to help you follow along with the weekly videos, And to be used as lifetime reference material, we have our near weekly video conferences in real time in small groups directly with us. Or as I mentioned, you could submit your questions in advance and listen to the recordings. The private study group is also there to support the learning process. We love connecting with our students and will be there with you the whole way for the entire 12 months. You can access the course anywhere you have an internet connection, which is most places on the planet. We'll be sending you an email shortly where we'll invite those of you who are really excited about the course to speak with us to answer any questions you have about the curriculum and the structure of the class to help determine if it's a good fit for you. You can also click on the schedule link that's on your screen right now. We look forward to speaking with you about your health goals and about how mastering raw food nutrition can help you achieve them. We're now going to take a 5-minute intermission. We'll be back in a few minutes to answer your questions, and in the meantime, please feel free to sign up for a time to speak with us.